This is time for free your mind and your soul. Yo, half the story has never been told. Ladies, you got to demand what you want, and what we want is respect, right? Yo, this is up on the track, I know so you have to feel it right. Freedom every time for the sisters. Check this. Watch this.
And here we go now. Listen, if I'm boom boom rule, I be the ruler like Slick Rick. Get with this quick witted Adidas wearing chick. Papa got a brand new bag. Mama got a brand new jag or go tag. I ain't no old hag. I represent not only in the kitchen, in the bedroom, but also in the boardroom. So give me more room. Deny my opportunity, you in jeopardy. Yo, set me free, don't hinder me, let me be.
I'm fighting for freedom, I got the heat in case you need them. Straight soldier, ain't nobody told ya. Hold up on them lies, I know your games and your plans.
Hi, friends. Hi, can anybody hear me? Jules, we can't hear you at all. You looked very entertaining and we really enjoyed whatever you were talking about, I'm sure, but we can't hear you. I'm sorry, everybody who's watching. Yeah, and I'm sorry I was a few minutes late. I realized I set myself up next to an air conditioning unit because it's really hot today and it was really loud. So I had to shift and come down to the basement where it's quieter. We still can't hear you, Jules. I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry. Hi, everybody. I'm Adam. No, we got nothing. No, now you're muted. Can you unmute?
Okay.
Hey, we got you! Yay! Oh my God! Sorry, everybody. We don't know what you said. The whole introduction.
I'll do a shorter version of it. So basically, my name is Jules. I am the host on here, and I also am a publisher. I also run a Discord server that is specifically for authors, writers, and poets, and for beta readers as well, which is a safe space just for them. But I also have some amazing admin people who work on there too, which are brilliant. I'm a dark fantasy author with a focus on it's kind of like a blend of science fantasy, sword and sorcery, Dungeons and Dragons, dark fantasy, but a focus on mental health and trauma recovery. So that's kind of embedded in books. I've written adult books and children's books, and what else? I'm in the process of writing 3 more books. There you go. That's a really condensed version of what I just said.
Well, as our guests on the chat said, you seem so passionate. We hated to interrupt, but yeah, we're glad we actually got to hear what you had to say.
I'm sorry. Is that what all the messages are? So I've just seen that there's a ton of messages. Oh no, I'm so sorry. No. There's loads of them.
Technical difficulties. It's just a thing. We're good.
Need a new mic.
Well, hi everyone. Let me introduce myself. I'm Adam. I'll do this quick. I write horror and fantasy. I've got a couple of scary books out, the Mantis variant and the sequel, Mantis Equilibrium. I've got it here somewhere. But yeah, and Jules is releasing my really massive, epic, queer norm fantasy adventure that deals with human sexuality and kinks and things like that. So we're excited about that. And we've got a bunch of guests today who we're really excited about as well. So yeah.
I'm very excited. It's quite a nice topic as well because it's quite open. You know, everyone has their own interpretation, don't they, of characters and how they should interact. And as readers as well, we tend to have our own expectations of what we think a type of relationship should look like. And it's always quite nice when you get pleasantly surprised or shockingly scared or something like that.
Yeah, or it's cool when people experiment with relationships, and because it's in writing, it's a safe place to sort of tweak those norms and play with things in a new way. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what's really nice about it as well is, our characters form the central part of our stories. As it says in the description, if we just had scenic descriptions and that was it, and just scenic events, that would be okay, it depending on how it was delivered. But if there's no characters if there's no central core route to the story, that can make it a bit tricky.
Yeah,
I suppose it would lend itself really nicely to poetry, but
well, I'm sorry, but I totally agree with you with that. There's a movie that just came out recently. I'm not going to mention it because I know a lot of people like it, but basically it's the whole story is just one character and almost no dialogue. And I hated the whole thing. I hated all of it.
You'll have to tell me what that is later.
It may have been beautifully shot, but yeah, it was just a scenery thing, and I couldn't get into it. Yeah.
There is a film that I've seen as well, which is focused on just one character, and the whole film is basically on that character. And whilst it's interesting, sort of, the problem is it's a very long movie and there's no real character development in it, and nothing really happens either. And it's just like, okay,
right? No, I feel you. No.
Yeah, so it's just like
drama. Where's the struggle?
Yeah, I know. And what's really cool is character interactions can be both scary and hilarious, and romantic and sexual, and
to readers in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and what one reader sees or reads as heartbreaking, another reader might read as a relief. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of it is the eye in the beholder, I suppose.
The interpretation.
It's quite a cool topic, I think, and it's quite nice because it means that it covers every single genre and every single style of writing and every method of writing. So regardless of whether it's a poem or just normal novel writing. So should we invite our lovely guests onto the screen?
We should. I think we've got 4 brand new people who've never been on the show before. So
I know. Right. Okay. So I'm going to. I'm never very good with these buttons. I really need to sit and actually practice.
As everyone has noticed since the beginning of this episode, with no volume, we have some technical difficulties from time to time, but we do our best.
We do. I am definitely. I can work a computer, but I'm not au fait with any of like the microphone and all that kind of stuff. It's just way out of my confidence zone. But never mind, we'll carry on anyway. All right, let's get them all on. Okay, so I'm just going to do them in order. So make sure you unmute, and if you want your face on screen, then obviously you can show your camera. But we completely respect it if you don't. So let's do this one. Hi.
Hello, hello.
Two more that are coming on as well.
Hang on a second. Two more.
All right. There we go.
Yay!
Hey everyone!
Hi, friends. Hi.
Hello.
Sure, you can leave your camera off. That's totally fine. But welcome to the show. Rachel, you want to go first and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your writing and your
sure.
stuff, where people can get it.
Camera off when you said I could. I was like, oh gosh, turn it off.
No, leave it on.
I'm Rachel. Let's see. I wrote a book a long time ago. It was my second novel. Got picked up in a pitch contest. I published it. I was young and I went with the wrong people. I felt like, for me, it wasn't right. Won't go too much into it, but it didn't really work out. I dealt with a lot of health issues. Didn't really write too much. Now I'm back at it. So I have a whole novel I'm trying to pitch. I wrote 10 years ago. Finally finished up, edited it, got it cleaned up. It's ready to go. And I'm already over 20,000 words into a new one. And I have 3 others already planned out that I have a few thousand words on each one. I'm just all over the place right now, I feel like. But I'm in better condition, better health these days.
Oh, good. I'm sorry you were struggling with health issues. Do you, are the books related? Do they have similar connections or are they all completely separate?
No, I'm not a series writer, unfortunately. I don't even feel like I stick with a lot of genres, really. My first one was a high fantasy. Nymphs in Macedonia and gypsy travelers break down. There's some kid from America visiting his gypsy grandparents, and he just happens to be in the caravan, and it's all craziness. My second one that got picked up was younger YA kind of MG superheroes in Portland. People love that one. So that was really fun. Nice. And she's an orphan who can't seem to keep herself out of trouble, and she finds out she's a superhero, and a bunch of fun ensues.
That's cool.
The one I'm pitching now is magical realism, kind of thriller. It is kind of dark. It has its dark moments in it because, it is 4 kids who are lost in the world. They don't know what they're doing. They're all in these very horrible situations in life, all seeking a second chance at life. So there are dark moments in it, obviously, to have tried to have a better, brighter future, but I did not write a happy ending in it necessarily. So.
I like tragic endings. I very much do. I'm a fan. We've discussed that before. And by the way, Jules, we got a thumbs up that everyone today really is enthusiastic about the topic of relationships. And it sounds like, Rachel, you've got some serious relationship issues and struggles that your characters go through.
Oh yeah, all based off of real life. That's a mess in my life. So I think I wrote a lot of it on personal experience, definitely.
Wow.
We've talked quite a lot before actually about how writing not only is a cathartic process, but actually we tend to write our own experiences into our work. And so there's aspects, I think, of all of our experiences within the body of what we've written.
Oh, definitely.
And I think as well, in terms of like health issues, I think a lot of people see authors as, and movie stars and radio stars, you're people who tend to be in the more public eye than people who are not, as all completely fit and healthy. And I think that people forget that actually there's lots of hidden conditions that people don't see, that when they might meet someone, that they kind of make an assumption, there's nothing wrong with that person, why can't they possibly do X, Y, and Z? And actually there's a realistic side to that. I completely respect the fact that health is a challenge. So yeah.
Well, we're so glad to have you here, Rachel. Thank you for being here. Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm excited.
Terry, you want to tell us all about yourself and your writing and everything?
Sure. My name is Terry Bartley. I'm a fantasy writer. My debut book, Tyranny of the Fae, will be coming out in August. It's available for pre-order now. I actually have it right here, just in case you want to look at the really cool cover. It is also full of great relationships. I do a lot of queer relationships. It's full of like sapphic love stories. And then also a lot of really great friendships, because I feel like that doesn't always get written as well as it should. So I have lots of really close, like, childhood friendships and like work colleague partnerships that become close, and those are all really important.
That's awesome.
Nice. That's cool. I love the cover as well. That's really cool. Very cool.
Did you send me an image of that? Because I meant to say to all four of you, send me your cover image if you want, and we can pop that up on the screen. I totally meant to have you.
Yeah, I can. If you send them all to Adam, and what we'll do is somewhere in the midst of it, I'll get them up on the screen for you, so you can show off your covers as well.
You don't have to do that immediately when you've got a second.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I'm just posting it into the chat as well. You know, it would be awesome if you could post your links into our chat, and then what I will do is I'll post them up when if you're able, if you want to do a reading, that'd be amazing. We can post it up then. Or if you don't want to do a reading, that's also absolutely cool. We can post it up anyway, sort of in the process of our conversation. So it is an open discussion tonight. So just, you know, don't sit there waiting for us to say, and what do you think, Terry? Whenever you like.
Well, so tell us a little bit about the story that you have coming out in August, because I can see multiple different, looks like, character species on the cover.
Yeah. So it's a very typical like fantasy D&D kind of world. It is a lot of real world allegory, as tends to be in fantasy sci-fi. So there's so the elves have colonized this other world where like all the other people live, to sort of like provide an allegory for the real world harm that has existed for a lot of colonialism that you see that has sort of impacted every culture. So we have like orcs and humans and halflings and all those various things that have all been touched in some way by the elven culture through colonialism. So like the language that they speak is elven, much like how here in the US we speak English, even though we are not in England, but the English, came over here and said hello. And that's why we speak English now. So a lot of that kind of stuff going on. All three main characters, they each have their own arcs, and it kind of goes through the time of the origins of the world. So the first one is a researcher who first discovers this other world to help them address their magical energy crisis, a little play on our energy crisis we're having right now. And then we jump ahead a couple hundred years to whenever the elves have left. The humans have overpopulated. The elves think this place sucks now, so they went back to the Fey realm. But then an elven princess runs away into this other realm to find adventure, and we follow her, kind of like abandoning her responsibilities and like living among the humans, which isn't easy for somebody who has a nearly immortal life compared to humans. And then we jump ahead another 200 years to a character named Karuk, who is an orc, and her tribe has a very specific way of living, and she wants to kind of break out and have a third way of living. And her friend Jin, who's a goblin, they run off and they form your very traditional like D&D adventure party, and we follow them as they go on their adventures.
Wow, interesting. I've totally got questions. We're gonna have to get into more details about that. That's gonna be exciting. But Aid, would you like to please introduce yourself and tell us about your work as well?
Hello, Aid Vane. I just this weekend put up for sale on Amazon my debut, the Vane Introduction to Macabre Myths and Monsters,
Wow.
which is a mouthful. But it's this professor essentially giving like a college lecture, and he is arguing that monsters exist, that they're very real, and it's set up as an anthology, and it's him going through like 7 different accounts. He has more, like he presents it like he has this huge library of his documented findings, but these are the 7 he's presenting in this class, and that's how that's the thing that ties all these 7 stories together, with the it's him talking to the people that were there at the events, or sorting through evidence left behind from someone's encounter with a monster, and just him essentially saying, like, if we're not careful and we forget, then who's to say they won't win in the end?
That's cool.
Your title sounds like it could be a nonfiction book about the history of mythology. That's so
Right.
wild, and to have it tie in as a teacher basically presenting that's I think that's brilliant. I think that's a very clever title.
Thank you.
And loving the fact that we're all fantasy authors here as well at the moment is awesome. I'm really enjoying this. It's going to be such a cool discussion, especially because we've all got slightly different aspects of the fantasy realm that we've got in our books. I'm really excited.
Awesome.
Welcome.
Yeah. Erica, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself as well?
Yeah, so my name is Erica McCorkle. I write fantasy, epic fantasy, dark, queer normative. All my books take place in the same world, the Pentagonal Dominion. They're not all connected, though. My first book is Merchants of Knowledge and Magic, and it's published. It's been out for about a year now. It is about a dragonfly person who is also intersex and asexual. And she is in a queer platonic relationship with a woman who has 4 arms and can cast magic. All of my characters are non-human. I don't write about humans. There are no humans in the Pentagonal Dominion. There may be 1 or 2, but I'll let the readers find those on their own. I have a second book, which is coming out in August. That book is called Merchants of Light and Bone. It takes place at the same time as my first novel, but doesn't take place in the same area. The main character in my first book and the main character in the second book will meet up in another book later on. But for now, the plots are not related. Mm-hmm. In my second book, the main character is a 36-year-old man who is a father of 7 children.
Wow.
And one of them has just recently passed away in an unfortunate accident. And the book explores his grief, and also seeks to find out whether her death was truly accidental. This man, the main character, he is bisexual and he is in a polyamorous relationship. He has a wife and a non-binary spouse. And they live in a tropical area of the world, so this is also a tropical fantasy story. And then the book that I'm working on now also takes place in the Pentagonal Dominion, but it takes place 250 years before the Merchants novels. And this is a story about an innkeeper and her found family of basically orphans. This is a rough time in the world's history, and there are a lot of runaway children at this point. So she will take in runaways and raise them just in her inn, basically. And this story takes place over the course of several decades and follows this family as they grow up. And even though many of them start as children, kind of the innkeeper's children, as they grow up, they become a polycule, various groups of lovers and best friends and co-workers, essentially.
Awesome, love it. And the celebration of different styles of relationships and the way that I think the LGBTQ queer community in general sort of does things a little bit differently and does things their own way. I love that you're celebrating that. That makes me very happy. So I'm looking forward to talking about all these relationships we've got going on.
Yeah, I myself am aromantic, asexual, so I like to write relationships that aren't always sexual. So yep. That's an important part for me in representation.
Yeah, the queer norm book that I have coming out with Jules' company deals with sex in a very straightforward way and presents it in a lot of kinks. But like you were saying, Terry, my Mantis book, I have no sex at all, and it's all about relationships. There was a point when my editor was like, please tell me these two don't get together in the end, because I love how they are friends, and they don't ever get together. They just stay friends. And I might have some readers who are like, are they a lesbian couple? And that's fine too if they think so. But in my mind, they're just friends all the way. So yeah, I love that we're all toying with that. So let's talk about stuff.
All right,
let's go. All right. So shall I open up?
Talk about anything. Yeah. Why don't you tell us about Ray? Tell us about some relationships you deal with.
Hear about Ray? Yeah, I mean, my main character in my dark fantasy series called Ray, she is she is bisexual, but she doesn't really realize she's bisexual because she's never really had a sexual encounter. Book 1 has got nothing to do with that in it, in terms of relationships like that. She gets horribly abused, and she gets captured and put in a dungeon and gets abused there and stuff. And so for her, it's just like, that's her only experience. But in book 3, she actually starts exploring a little bit more about herself. And whilst there's potential love interest that could maybe be a love interest, maybe big older brother, maybe best friend kind of thing going on here, they're not related, by the way. In case you're wondering, I'm like kind of making them related, and it's incest. It's not. They're just kind of like, they love each other, but it's what kind of love they have. And in book 3, she travels with this girl called Katori, who is just like this wild child orc. They're like pretty orcs, yeah, and they photosynthesize through their skin, and she's got covered in tattoos and piercings and all sorts of things, and just basically doesn't give a shit. And whereas Ray is she's much more reserved, and Katori makes her feel like she can be free and be something different. And so I don't write heavy sex scenes at all in any of my books. We talked before, haven't we, about writing to comfortability.
Yep.
And I think, yeah, I think
we celebrate every level of writing, every qualities of where they feel comfortable with sexuality, with relationships. We celebrate it all. Yeah.
And so my books kind of have like a whole mixture of like, there's child abuse going on, there's rape, there's physical assault, there's wounds that they get during battle and things like that. So there's quite a lot going on that, but what I've done is I've tried to keep it so none of it's really graphic. It's there and you can imagine it, but without actually having absolutely every single little bit of detail written about. But yeah, I mean, she starts off a really happy teenager, and then she becomes depressed, she has PTSD, she has anxiety, and she ends up developing this fear of being alone. And so she'll seek out literally any company she can, even if it means that they're camping in the woods and she can just overhear their conversation, but she can't see them and they can't see her, and there's no actual interaction. That for her is safer than being completely alone. And that stems from her captivity. So yeah, there's quite a complex bunch of relationships going on in there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's quite hard to write.
Well, I think that what you're saying before, that we put so much of ourselves into it that it can be very intense to let that out. Please feel free to jump in. Anybody want to?
Absolutely.
Your relationship?
I was gonna say,
go ahead.
That I definitely felt with Jules on a lot of that, because in my novel that I'm currently trying to pitch right now, Second Breath, is very much about relationships. A very dysfunctional family. The father is alcoholic. He's abusive. You have an older brother who's 17, getting ready to turn 18. He wants to run away with his younger sister, who's still only 15 years old. They want to get out of there. You have this whole inner demon thing where, Harmon himself isn't sure if, he can do it all and whatnot, because he himself is turning into his father. He can see it by his heavy drinking every day, party lifestyle with his friends. He's supposed to be the big older brother, but at the same time, it's his youth. He's a teenager. And so when he dies, he goes to this afterlife. It's almost like a whole Dante's Inferno, if it was written for younger kids, without any graphic stuff of going through the motions of realizing that the demons are within yourself. It's not the outside, that you did this to yourself, that everything you've done. A spoiler for the novel, but in the end, Herman finds out that he himself killed his sister, when the whole time he wants to get out of this afterlife, go back, save her from their father, only to realize in the end he was the one that was driving drunk as they were trying to leave town, crashed the car, she's dead. It's just kind of one of those reality checks of, you think that you're doing the right thing all the time. You think all your P's and Q's are there because all you can see is the bigger evil, that you're not seeing the evil within yourself.
Wow.
You're not seeing any of that. And then you have just a few other relationships. It does take point of view for different people. because they're all fighting for the same thing. They all want that second chance at life. They're all running from past demons, mistakes, demons within themselves. And there's a lot of dynamic there with relationships and trust issues. And I feel a lot of PTSD.
I mean, I can relate to that. So, like my first book, the cover is changing, by the way. So this is like the older version, but I've got a lot of inner demons in my one, and so they represent basically she has a lot of inner demons from all the stuff that she goes through, and there's monsters in the world, and the monsters are real in her world, but I'm using them as a metaphorical example of if you don't deal with those inner demons, they will eventually end up taking you. Whether it's into madness or somewhere else, they will eventually get you. And so a lot of it is where she fights these monsters. And at the beginning, they are fairly small. And as the books progress, they're going to get bigger because she doesn't deal with her issues. She just buries them. And what she does, she ends up going to try and kill everything and everyone and every soldier she meets, she just wants to kill them because of how they treated her. And actually, that's not healthy.
Probably not healthy. Yeah, probably not.
So go on, Adam. What did you say?
No, I was just saying that's probably not healthy. Yeah.
No, not at all. So it is very much a battle of what's going on inside, and actually the battle that we have inside is sometimes much worse than what is going on externally. But we tend to make the external more significant than the internal, I think. I'm not talking about every situation, but there are certain things I think that do require the inner insight and support. So I can resonate completely with what you're saying there. That's fantastic what you're writing. It really is.
I think it is interesting to note that, whenever you have these inner traumas and your things you're dealing with or you not dealt with, that does impact your relationships. It's hard to build relationships whenever you've not dealt with what you're going through. Like in my writing, I have a character that's dealing with grief a lot. Her partner for many, many years had passed away, and she can't make connection with people. She doesn't want to fall in love again. She doesn't want to make friendships again because she doesn't want to lose them. But if you don't deal with that trauma in any way, then you can't build relationships that are productive.
Absolutely. And I think again, grief is one of those. Sorry, ignore my dog. He likes to make himself known every now and again. He agrees with you. I think grief is one of those things where no one can really teach you how to grieve. You have to be able to experience that pain and to be able to go through it, to be able to then know what worked and what didn't. And it's almost like a trial by fire, isn't it? But obviously in a literal sense. I think that's a really powerful subject to write about. And you're right, grief completely changes people's perceptions on things. If you've gone through grief and then you have people who are close to you, you don't want to lose them. You want to cling on to them and make sure that or you distance yourself, don't you? Put barriers up and you push them away because then it can't hurt if they do disappear for whatever reason.
Yeah, I was going to ask, Terry, how do your characters deal with, how does the grief change them? Like you were saying, that changes.
Yeah, I mean, both happen, honestly, like what Jules said. So there's, whenever one person dies in her life, she starts bringing the people that she's very close to way closer. She can't lose them, she has to protect them, but then she doesn't want to let anyone else in to that circle. That circle is then very closed, these people I have to protect, but no one else can come in because then that's more people that I could lose, right?
Right.
And then as her life goes on, as she loses other people, then she just sort of stops. She puts up those walls. She stops sort of letting people in, and she realizes that she has to move through life, and there will be people that she works with and things, but she doesn't actually build friendships and make real connections. And we sort of see the toll that takes on her as she moves through.
That's really cool. I mean, in a really powerful way.
Yeah, strong, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think people need to be able. Sometimes people get their experiences from books, don't they? If they've got no one else in their life to talk to, having a book that they can actually then relate to.
I think a lot of us have drawn amazing experiences from books.
I think that if the thing that you're feeling is happening through a character in a book and it gets communicated in a way that resonates, then you don't
Yeah.
feel so alone, and it makes sense, and you feel validated. You know.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. What about either of you two, Eric or Ida?
Well, in talking about grief and how that affects relationships, this is very much what my upcoming book is about, because it's about the father who has two spouses and their daughter passed away. So this book very much explores how all of them grieve and how that event affected their relationship with each other. At the beginning of the book, the mother is very, what's the word I'm looking for here? She's very like off-putting. She doesn't want other people to talk to her, and that kind of scares her children in a way. It's like, oh, mama needs to be left alone. She isn't really here for us right now. At least that's how the main character sees it. And the main character is kind of blind to what is really going on, because she's grieving, but she also needs someone to talk to her, but they're scared of her. So their relationship is strained until they're able to reach out to her, to talk to her, to find out, how can we help you? How can we help you help our family?
Why are they scared of her?
Because she snaps at them a bit.
Oh, okay.
Also, the main character, the father in this case, and the non-binary spouse, one of their methods of coping, I should say, is basically physical intimacy. The idea is if they're having sex or touching, then that distracts them from the pain. So they have been going off to do that by themselves, and they think that that's making the wife angry. That, oh, you're just going off to have sex while I cry in my room. Like, so they think that she's angry about that, and to a degree she is, and I think she has every right to be as well, because they haven't been communicating with her what their needs are.
Yeah, so I think that, if you're a parent and then you've had a loss of something, whoever it happens to be, and whatever the kind of relationship is, it's so difficult to then continue being a parent whilst you're also grieving at the same time, because it's almost like you have to park your grief at certain times so that you can continue being a parent that your children need, whilst also working through it, which is really difficult, because you also then at the same time need to somehow teach your children how to grieve so that they can learn how to grieve. And you only do that by showing them it's such a complex mix of emotions and difficulties. That's a really challenging thing to write about.
It is, yes, but I've really enjoyed it. The book is almost done, but it's been very interesting to write, and sometimes when I'm writing it, I will like to start crying, because I'll channel my main character and I'll feel what he's feeling, and it's extremely powerful, and it can be very crushing.
Well, I think that representation is so important, and I'm slightly over 40, and I didn't have a whole lot of representation growing up, people to look up to as a queer person, and so yeah, putting yourself into your characters, or making characters a type of person who does not have great representation in the past, and celebrating them. I think that's very powerful, and I think super emotional. I totally understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was wondering if you would like to do some reading with a section from your work. This is open to all of you, that kind of relates to the topic that we're talking about today, and it could be entirely your choice how much or how little you want to read, but it'd be absolutely delightful to hear your own take on it, and how you've kind of written it into your work, because I think.
And I just want to make sure, Abe, did you have anything you wanted to tell us about your character?
Yeah, sorry,
I am so sorry.
I was listening to all of you, and I already feel like all of you are in a way different league than I am, but
we're all in this together. Yeah.
You were saying about like basing a character off of yourself. And there are two stories that come to mind from my anthology series. One with probably my better qualities, and then one with my not so good qualities. But like the first one that came to mind was this little girl that I had written, who it's that feeling when you're a little kid, when you're like, I want this person to be my friend, so I'm going to do things that I would not normally do. Not like stealing a candy bar or anything like that, but like I'm going to come and say, hey, I'm a huge Nickelback fan because I saw you wearing a shirt 3 weeks ago and I remembered it.
Wow, that would be embarrassing. Oh my God, yeah. Okay, I'm with you.
Like that's that small little thing that you do as a kid that you try to let go of as an adult, but like just using that as an example of like, oh, like basing a character off of yourself. This girl's tiny psycho. Anyway, but going on to the other, like the more adult one, is this guy who so y'all were talking about grief, y'all were talking about loss, and it's one of the first lines in his story. And so this man gets turned invisible, and I never in the piece say how this happened, and I purposely left that vague. But the line is, I can't talk to my family anymore. I watched them mourn me. Like, he attended his own funeral. He can't talk to them because every time he does, dry throat. Every time he does, they scream, they freak out because they're like, oh my God. Mm-hmm. So having to like let go of that world that was everything to you, and then move into the unknown. And so like his whole story, he essentially goes on a quest for a connection. Now the connection he chose is for Dracula, but he was like, this thing happened to me, and so I guess I'm a monster now. So I'm just going to give into that because that's what everything I've learned up to this point has led me to believe.
Interesting. I've got a character who goes through something that, not exactly a vampire, but makes them different, and they feel the opposite. They're like, I can't be this thing. I can't be this thing. How did this happen to me? And they sort of fight all the urges. That's interesting.
Right. No, totally gives in.
Dive right into it.
But like the idea that when you're left alone to just wallow in your grief, what do you become after? Especially when like the reason for your grief was absolutely accidental. Like it was something completely out of your control, which I mean most grief is, but yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's incredibly fascinating. You're very much in our league. You should not feel inferior here at all.
Yeah. Don't sell yourself short at all. And we've talked about it. That we do celebrate all types of writing. That YA writing is important because it allows not only young adults but adults who want to read something a little gentler than the chaos that I put in my terrible books. That's not for everybody. There has to be like a gateway horror to get you to my twisted stuff, So,
I mean, your stuff does keep me up at night, Adam. I'm really. It's hard to work through your book without being like, oh my gosh.
No, like I was.
we need gentler horror. We need why adult stuff. We need fantasy that celebrates queer people, that doesn't talk about sex, that just celebrates them in a different way. We need all those levels to get up to the stuff that other people write. We are all important, every single one of us.
The whole spectrum.
I was so excited when it was a jewel in there, and it wasn't like a weird organ. It was a jewel. I'm like, oh man, that was so good.
Oh, I'm so glad. And when I was coming up with the title, I was gonna call it something gland, and people were like, no, that word is so gross. You can't use the word gland. That's terrible. And you're right, it is gross. But the fact that it's not actually a gland, that has made a lot of people happy. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
And you read my book to know what we're talking about. So
I know all these. I'm like sitting here and I'm like,
everywhere.
I'm halfway through it. I didn't finish.
That's very cool. Okay, I've got a couple of front covers that I've managed to upload. So I've got The Merchants of Knowledge and Magic and The Tyranny of the Fae. So if
let's
there are
have
any other images that you'd like to send over, send them to Adam and I'll get them.
Yeah, Rachel and Aid, if you've got a front cover you want us to share, send it to me. Terry, do you want to read a little of your work first to us?
Sure.
Cool. Normally what we do is we pop you up on the screen all by yourself if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Please introduce yourself one more time. Tell us the name of the work, where folks are going to be able to get it when it's available, and then read for a while, and as long as you're comfortable, and then just say you're done when you're done, and we'll all pop back up on the screen again. Cool?
All right, sounds good.
Just to remind everyone, so we're actually live on YouTube at the moment, but we're also live on Facebook and we're also live on Twitter. And there'll obviously be replays as well. So I would love it if you could subscribe, share. If you're watching on something other than YouTube and you want to join in and you want to ask any of the authors questions, or if you have any comments you'd like to add, then if they're awesome comments or they're funny, we can add them to the screen and the authors might be able to answer some of your questions. So come and join us over here on YouTube. We're also live just vocally on Clubhouse as well. And that is obviously not got any video, so if you're listening there you won't unfortunately see any front covers. However, join us on YouTube and you can. So there you go, that's my little plug. All right, I'm going to hand it over to you. Here you go, Terry. Off to you.
All right, so my book is called Tyranny of the Fae. My name is Terry Bartley. I'm a fantasy writer. Tyranny of the Fae is currently available for pre-order sort of anywhere you can buy books. It is on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, everywhere. There's an audiobook being recorded right now. I've been approving narrator chapters, so that should be available within the next couple of weeks. And it will also be available to any sort of bookstore you can order books from. So feel free to pre-order from your local bookstore as well. So we've been talking about grief. So I'm going to read a little bit about whenever my character Aisha, she is an elven princess that ran away into the material world. And we're going to talk a little bit about whenever she first has to sort of deal with this grief. It's not always easy being an elf in a human world. They never use enough seasoning on their food. It feels like all their cultural traditions revolve around money. They keep saying things like life is short when it just isn't for me. They just grow old too fast. When someone says they'll love you for the rest of their life, you like to think that they'll be around for the rest of yours. For an elf in a human world, that is just not how things work. Tracy and I have lived what many in Gelvin would consider a full life. We've made so many friends and lost about half as many. We made a lot of money and bought a house. We've raised 2 teenage magic users into successful adult adventurers, and even saved the world a couple of times. We were 2 very accomplished individuals, but Tracy was nearing the end of her life, and I still have several centuries left in me. I loved this place because it moved so fast. Now I understand why. All right, so I'll go ahead and stop there. And that is my reading. Thanks.
Make sure you unmute yourself when you come back onto the screen, because we do tend to get muted for a second. Thank you so much for reading.
That was really good.
Did you want to read a little bit more, or was that your comfort level?
I mean, I have a bit more I can read. I'm going to jump to different sections, so it's not as heavy.
Okay, yeah, we just didn't want to put pressure on you. I like that it's in first person. Jules, you write in first person also, right? Is that correct? Yeah.
I would only ever write in first person, yeah.
Cool. All right, so you want to read another section? I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be great.
What I'll do, Terry. Yeah, what I'll do is I'll also put your front cover up as well for everyone to see, so you can have a look at that as well whilst you're reading.
Yeah, sounds great. All right, so this section is by, this will be for Karuk's perspective. She is the orc that is trying to find another way to live her life. So her family just had a ceremony, and she's sort of finding a way out of that. She's slipping away. After the morning ceremony, I hid within the crowd so I could sneak out of the village without my family noticing. Once I made it into the open jungle, I raced through the trees, jumping over roots and swinging across branches. Some of my earliest memories were racing against adult hunters across the jungle. I always had a knack for finding my way through the wilds. I noticed the way this branch curved upward or those roots spread out a little bit further. I may have wanted to leave the tribe, but I still loved the jungle. I made it to a clearing beside the large waterfall. I've been coming here for the past 3 years, and it was the place I could drop my mask and fantasize about the life I truly wanted. This was the place I could truly be myself. I heard Jin approach before I saw him. His drumbeat carried throughout the trees, and I could hear the birds singing along. He danced the way into the clearing, lost in the music. Jin's thin, muscular arms beat a rhythm more appropriate in the Anglichellian tavern than the middle of the jungle. His yellow-green skin, the color of an unripened lime, shone in the sunlight. Sweat dripped off his pointed nose and ears. As he finished his song, I offered a hearty applause. Stop it, Jen said. It's only us here. You can just say thank you for the private concert. You know, I should charge you for this. Of course, I replied, grinning at him. What sort of game would you like for payment? Boars seem to be plentiful this time of year. He gave me an unsatisfied look. Oh, you wanted coin? I asked sarcastically. I'm afraid an orc of the Hukawan tribe has no use for it. Jen unstrapped the drum from his shoulder and collapsed into a nearby moss pile. I know that's not true. I followed his lead and sat on a log from a recently fallen tree. Maybe so, but where would I get it? I keep telling you, Rookie, we need to go to the city. I can play at a tavern and earn some money. You know I'm good enough, Jen said. You're no doubt good enough. I've never seen anyone so skilled with an instrument that they can call upon magic with a ritual, I said. But how would we get past the guards? They would never let either of us into the city alone, much less together. The only way an orc or a goblin can get into the city is with a trade party, and there's no way we could sneak away without getting ourselves killed. You can stop being practical any time now, Jen begged. It is a nice fantasy offered. It is that. All right. And that's it for my reading.
Yay! Again, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
The description of the characters with like the pointed ears and the skin color of unripe limes, the descriptions are great. Thank you for sharing it with us.
It reminds me of WoW. I used to play WoW quite a bit. I was a big World of Warcraft person.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment.
I love it. I really love the world. I love it. I also enjoy the fact that you call it the material world, the human world. We call it the material world. I think that's very interesting. Don't take this the wrong way or anything. I like it because when I was growing up until I was 16, I was a Jehovah's Witness. And a lot of it, when they used to talk about people outside of the church, they would call it the material world, or say, don't hold on to material possessions or material things, or don't be materialistic. And, it was always kind of a good way of putting things. So I like the fact that, obviously elves and whatnot are going to be more tribal. They're going to be more cultural with nature. And so I like that, they're calling it the material world.
Yeah, I love it whenever I'd intentionally do something clever. That sounds like I did a really great thing. Thanks for that.
You did. I always think like orcs and elves are always quite difficult to describe because people always have the preconceived idea of what they actually look like. And so to try and create something that's slightly different is quite tricky. So yeah, you did a great job. I love the as well. Sorry, go on.
Sorry. I was just gonna ask a question. Does anybody else, whenever they read elves, read them in an American Southern accent, or is that just me?
I don't think I've ever read elves in that kind of accent personally.
No, sorry, elves, orcs.
Orcs, no.
I love the idea of elves being like these country bumpkins. Somebody needs to write that story. The way that you just said that by accident, that little Freudian slip, I want that story now.
Only when my Okie side comes out.
That's awesome.
That's really.
I think the only not even like a fantasy species, but like a people that I have read in like an American Southern accent is in Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series, the Sansan. But that's because Robert Jordan himself has said that the Sansan have a Southern drawl. So
it puts it
that's
right
why I read them that way.
Yeah.
Well, and it's just for me, I read them in a Southern accent because the word y'all, Y''ALL, is so close to a lot of orcish languages. They'll start putting apostrophe, so that's how I start to read it.
Cool.
I love checks out.
I like that.
That's a good reason.
I'm trying to in my head. I'm trying to imagine orcs talking in the Southern drawl, and my accents are very good.
I can relate.
So yeah, no, mine tend to be more British, but more based on Lord of the Rings type,
I imagine most people think British, but it's every time I read orcs, I always that's from Texas.
Yeah, we need orcs to come from the Appalachian Trail or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, totally. I love it. I love that idea.
I
You know,
like
my
the idea of
orcs and
country bumpkins.
my orcs and goblins are very much allegory for indigenous peoples. So like it was not unlikely that some of them may have more southern accents. And I did base I live in West Virginia, so I based the jungle very much on the Appalachian forest around me. So maybe you're right. Maybe they are southern.
There's quite a lot of mysteries.
Sorry, it
about
was just a
this
thought.
No, I love it. This
Yeah.
is why we love this open forum of discussion, because it leads us to different things. And yeah, no, totally great.
Absolutely. And what's really cool about this is it's a nice safe space for us to talk about whatever we want to, in terms of, like, you know, if we go off topic a bit, we go off topic a bit, isn't it? You know, it's fine. And what I really enjoy is not only we building a nice community together, we're getting the message out there about writing and love of writing and just enjoying the writing process, regardless of how much or how little you write, but also offering help and support for people who may be struggling a little bit. And I think that's really important too, because it's quite a lonely thing to do, I think, sometimes, writing, especially if you kind of like get caught up in it and the whole week's gone past and you're like, oh.
Well, let's get somebody else to read now. Let's have somebody else. Who'd like to go next? Rachel, you want to read?
Sure. Okay.
Cool. So same deal. We'll pop you on the screen. Introduce yourself. Tell us where people can get your stuff, or they will be able to, or anything, and then read until you're done.
Okay. I am Rachel Wade. Let's see. I live out here in Portland, Oregon. Actually, I live right near Adam, so we're planning on a little meet and greet soon, so we can actually see each other. Hopefully at the summer market. So I mainly write YA, but I do have some adult pieces that I'm working on currently, in one middle grade. I'm gonna read a piece from A Second Breath, which is the novel I am currently working towards getting published. I debated on a long time whether or not I would self-publish it or not, but I think I might go with a small publisher again. We'll see. I'm kind of putting some queries out there. We're testing the water, smaller lit agents. We're kind of seeing what's happening. So the scene I'm going to read is a shared scene. So it's shared between both Harmon and his younger sister. And for me, this was important to get a perspective of both of them when this thing is happening, because they do have a lot of thoughts that go through their head with just everything that's happening in their life at the moment. And so it's kind of important because it's right before everyone dies, essentially. So let's see here. This is Harmon's perspective that we're going to read from. Okay. Do you believe in ghosts? Her voice carried across the room, tapering to a whisper in the dark hall. It was an eerie sound in the empty house, a house that seemed to be aware of its lack of residency. They could hear it in the creaks and groans of old wooden floorboards and see it on the dusty tops of window sills and banisters. Harmon shifted his gaze from the open window to Tilly, a pale oval set with mahogany eyes that looked more black in the shadows. His eyes flitted to the slight discoloration across one of her cheekbones before looking away once more. I don't believe in anything I can't see, he answered. The room was drenched in blackness. A few lumpy candles served as meager light, melted together across the floorboards. The musty odor of rotting wood hung thick in the air. There wasn't any furniture in the house, so they sat amongst the cobwebs and lost pennies. The last drag of whiskey swished at the bottom of the bottle as he offered it to Tilly. She wrinkled her nose at it in response. Harmon shrugged. Tipping his head back, he killed it off in one gulp. It streaked from the corners of his mouth and collected at his chin as he drank. He swiped at the stray streaks with the back of his hand and gave a small belch of satisfaction. Tilly twisted her mouth at him in disgust. I saw one tonight, she said. It took him a moment to realize she was still talking about ghosts. Oh yeah? And did it say boo? She glared at him. Do you have to be such an asshole? On any other night, he would have chastied her for being such a lying brat, but tonight Harmon was too tired to get worked up over her stories. There were much more important things to worry about. You didn't see a ghost, Tilly. He lit a cigarette and took a deep drag from it. The tip flared red and then died down to an ashen tip. It was Mom. She said it so placidly, as if she were announcing her weekend plans to him, or her supper choice, rather than their mother who killed herself. It was probably just a dream, or shock, you know, he shrugged. You see things. Harmon took another drag off his cigarette and let it out slowly, flicking the ash to the floor. He couldn't fight with her right now, not when she was like this, not after what had happened. Though the longer she carried on, the easier it was to forget his fatigue in the wake of his increasing annoyance. It was real. And his annoyance grew quickly. Let's go. We'd said we'd meet Tommy at midnight, and it's... Harmon clicked his phone on, checking the face. 11:47. Why don't we just stay here a little longer? You've had a lot to drink. She eyed the empty bottle in silent reference, but he ignored her. I'll be fine. Looking around the cottage, he felt an ache in his chest, a deep hollow there where a much different feeling used to occupy that space. Longing, maybe, or more like hope. There was a time when coming here used to comfort him. She told him they would buy the house and fix it up. They'd be happy there, free. The dump was nothing now but a sad shack of broken promises. We never even came close, Mom.
Yay! Again, make sure you unmute yourself, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for reading it, Rachel. That
was amazing.
intense emotion. Yeah, intense. Yep.
It's really hard.
Anything but
No, it was really good. It's really hard to write intense emotions. It's really hard to write characters that have, deep emotional connection, or what, regardless of what type of connection it is. It's really difficult to write that, and then to convey that to readers. So,
And Harmon especially, he has a bit of a hard time getting in connection with his emotions, where his sister is more, open to anything. She's willing to see her mother as a ghost. She's willing to, try to talk with her brother constantly and try to chit chat with him and get her feelings out, where he's always just like, and just kind of waving it away. And,
so they sound like they're in very different stages of that process. Like she's obviously it sounds like she's further along. I love the name as well. It's cool.
Oh yeah, that was chapter 33. So 31 and 33 have shared.
And it seems like there's a very strong dynamic because you've developed two very distinct characters who are feeling very different things, and I think that's not only great for the reader because there's a stark clarity between the two characters, but I think it also is relatable. Because most of us have met somebody who's more extreme one way or another in the way they feel, and somebody doesn't like to talk about their feelings, and somebody's overly emotional. Like, we've all met somebody like that. That's
definitely
totally
and
relatable.
That sibling dynamic of, he's still trying to be almost like a father figure towards her, but also still trying to be a brother and still try to live his own life. And so this scene is it actually is kind of the forefront. It's like the beginning, but you don't realize it because it takes you back and it tells you what happened that night when they died. And so it all just kind of flows together. You feel like you're just reading one continuous story when you realize you're kind of looped.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, and then it all kind of makes sense. It's
awesome.
So it definitely shows how he's changed, because in the very beginning he just wants to brush her off all the time and everything else, and then you realize he kind of lost that chance when it's a little too late and should have been there more for her in a sense.
Yeah, some of my favorite things to read are those really subtle character moments, like the draw of the cigarette, the slush of the whiskey, and so I loved perfect. I really loved the scene that you set there, and the way that he sort of didn't say he wouldn't push her off immediately, but the way that he would sort of look away. I loved it. Very, very subtle. Very, very well done.
Yeah. I think sometimes it's the subtlety that has much more impact and meaning, doesn't it, than really over explanations, loads of descriptions, sometimes just kind of leaving it down to the reader to figure out from sort of small actions or small behaviors. And I think you get to have a deeper relationship with the character as well. So no, it's really good. Really, really good. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. No, you haven't put any links up for me, so I haven't been able to put anything up for you. So if you put them, if you want me to, I will.
I have a web page that's so simple. I can give you that. I don't really have much else going on, so.
No pressure. Yeah. We totally love celebrating unpublished authors who don't have any website, don't have anything available yet. I mean, we still love everybody here. So,
Yeah, we're building this platform to do just that. So yeah, if you want us to share that, then put it in our private chat, and I'll stick it on the big screen for you. All right, okay. Who would like to go next?
Hey, real quick. Hey, did you send me a cover image by any chance, or are you?
I don't have one.
Okay, don't worry. No worries at all. No worries at all. I just want to check. Okay. Would you like to read next? Does that sound good? Does that sound good? Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So, same again. Introduce yourself again. We'll pop you on the screen. Tell everybody where they can get your work, Amazon or your own website or wherever, and then read again until, just like Rachel and Terry, until you're comfortable, and stop when you're done, and that'll be great.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Aid Vane, and this is from the Vane Introduction to Macabre Myths and Monsters. The book is currently available in ebook and paperback on Amazon. It's a horror anthology. It was meant to be a horror anthology, but now I'm realizing it's leaning more towards fantasy. The piece I'll be reading is from the Shelley story. Dear Diary, I found out that Candace and Cameron have sleepovers every weekend. It's nothing big, according to them. It's just hanging out, watching movies, playing games, talking. It sounds so nice, though. It sounds like what friends do to cheer each other up when life gets hard. I wouldn't say my life is hard or anything. I just sit in my room reading books. I don't do things and stuff. That's what I want in my life. I want things and stuff. That way I can look back and say I did something. I don't want to become some adult who never made any fun memories growing up. I need to very subtly get an invitation to one of those sleepovers. To do that, I have to get close to one of these girls, ideally both of them. I need to make them care about me enough that they feel comfortable calling me a friend. Then I need to increase that comfort level from I can be around you daily to I can fall asleep around you. I know Candace usually falls asleep leaning against the tree at school. She usually does this after the class, after lunch. I need to be the tree. My plan is to get her to run extra hard at gym. That way she's so tired she doesn't care where she falls asleep. After gym, I'm going to watch her until she looks real drowsy. When I know she's dead on her feet, I will swoop in. It's going to be hug, sit us both down while we talk, scoot over real close, but not so much she thinks it's weird, and wait for her to lean over. I have to make sure she sits down to the right of me. She always leaned left on the tree. I will recreate it as much as possible. I will be the tree. Once I'm the tree, she'll know she can fall asleep around me. She'll pass that information along to Cameron, and that'll get me my invite. Dear Diary, the plan needs to be pushed back. That sucks because I've been practicing the hug and spin with my pillow, and I think I got it down. I've been working on Cameron since Candace is away visiting her grandma for the week. That's fine. Cameron is better with books anyway. We've been living in the library. I think the librarian is going to start charging us rent. She likes all kinds of books, but especially anime. There are these Asian comic books with all kinds of gory nonsense in them. The writing and storylines in them are wild. They're so different from what I've been checking out. And we don't have anything like them in the house. The books I read from my mom's room are all Christine Feehan. Cameron checks out like 6 of them every week. I don't know how she does it. We piled up all the ones she's read, and it covered the table. She's been at it for months. I made her smile so hard when I told her how amazing that was. I'm well on my way to being called a friend, and soon I'll be the tree. Dear Diary, there's no other way to say this. The hug and spin worked. It worked so well, I made sure to run really fast in gym and got Candace to keep up with me. She was telling me all about the movies she watched with her grandma. She didn't even notice we were sprinting. Those old detective movies had her all out of breath. I saw her getting really tired and yawning a lot at lunch. Then Cameron and I were talking about the fighting books we've read. I saw her yawn and I went in for the hug. She sank into my arms. Then it was just like I practiced. The spin and sit worked perfectly. As soon as she laid her head on my shoulder, I could smell the pillows she sleeps on every night. They smelled like roses and cotton. I stayed perfectly still, and Cameron and I just smiled at her. I expect my invitation to a sleepover is imminent. Dear Diary, I got my invitation. I won't be a lonely adult. I won't have regrets that shatter me. I've made friends and have been invited to see them sleep. There are at least 2 people in this world that want to wake up and have me be the first thing they see. I make them happy, and they make me happy in return. I'm so excited. I tried asking them what they wanted me to wear, and they said whatever is comfortable. I told them I really needed a dress code, and they laughed. Cameron said she had clothes that were about my size that I could borrow, and I almost died. If she lets me go home in those clothes, I'm going to wash them so well. I'll make those clothes so clean that it'll make what she gave me seem dingy. Actually, I won't do that. If I do that, she'll hate me. I'll make sure to give her clothes back in the exact condition she gave them to me in. Every inch of me will be covered with deodorant so I do not sweat in the clothes. I'm so excited. that's the piece. I'll be reading for that.
I totally laughed while you were reading. That was adorable.
Yeah, she's a tiny psycho.
It was really beautiful.
I like the diary aspect.
Very much so.
I just loved the voice a lot. It was very, I mean, it's in the best way. It felt very Taylor Swift, and there were a lot of like references to the real world. Like it felt very relatable, you know?
Yeah.
I also really liked the diary aspect. I've always wanted to write a book kind of in a diary format, so I think that's really cool.
And okay, so I don't really care about spoilers, but
tell us. We love spoilers on this show. I love saying that.
the end of that story is just so fun because essentially she goes to the sleepover and these girls play Bloody Mary, and that's the monster that they meet. It's weird things start happening, and at one point Mary begins attacking, I guess, and her way of doing so is giving one of these girls her period, and it's at school. So when it's time for them to confront Mary, they essentially summon her again at a separate sleepover, and she like emerges from a hole in the floor. And these girls are so full of rage that they punch the ghost back into the ground. And that's how that story ends.
That's so cool. I love that. I do love
physical proof of the afterlife. I love it.
Yep.
You know Tarantino's Death Proof? Oh gosh, I love that one because the girls in the end, he messes with the wrong chicks and they beat him up. I love it.
Absolutely. I love a bit of girl power. I love the diary as well. I think it's a really lovely way of portraying a story, but it has to be done right. And I think if you kind of like, not you, but I have seen other books where they've done it and it's just not quite right.
It's like Terry said. You nailed the voice. I know that we're talking about out loud that you're speaking of it, but your character's voice was totally believable. Yeah.
And this tiny psycho, and I know I keep calling her that, but while they were punching this ghost in the face, she was not like, she actually tried to document it as it was happening because she was like, that's the only way. Like this is a science experiment. So you see like 617 punch.
Wow. We're gonna have like a sequel to it, or is it just as it stands? What's your plan for the end?
So this was like the introduction to this world that monsters exist in, where and I'm currently working on like the next book, which going forward it's going to take more of like a Goosebumps format where I spend like 30,000 words doing one story that I deem fun.
Interesting. I must admit, I'm still caught on the whole concept of blending the diary entry with the fantasy genre. It's really not something that you see. I don't know if there is any other books out there that do that specifically, but I think it's just a fantastic way of representing your unique tale that you're telling. That one concept alone is just fascinating.
Right. Jules is right. It's brilliant. Yeah. And I've got to ask, is it the only one of the anthology that's done as a diary form?
It's technically yes. Well, I say technically because there's one story that's supposed to be like video transcriptions from a guy's like blog.
Oh wow!
Each one is different.
So similar. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to go back to a comment that you made at the very beginning, where you said that you were not on the same level or whatever, you know, how
You got to celebrate
I'm
yourself. honey.
sorry, you have completely sold yourself short. I think it doesn't matter necessarily if like your, I don't know, your depth of conversations or depth of character interactions is matching ours. Your creativity with what you've done is so unique and it is amazing. I've never ever heard of like the diary with the fantasy and you know the transcript. I think that's just fascinating and so
Jules
interesting.
is impressed. Jules is impressed.
I mean, thank
Over
you.
here. That's amazing. I genuinely am impressed. Thank you for sharing that. That's just cool.
And I do think it's good to point out like that just we're different. Storytelling is different, and because like the rest of us were telling stories over a longer period of time. So like yeah, we can tell more depth of like relationships, but that's not what your anthology is, and that's good. That's fine. Like they're different things, you know.
Yeah. And quite often with the diary entries, for example, like Bridget Jones's diary, that's, you know, and that I don't know if you've ever read, it's actually a really good book. And there's some diary entries which are like 3 lines long or 3 words long, depending if she's drunk or not, and or hungover.
Realistically.
Yeah. But what's really cool is it doesn't matter because you're there with the character and you're reading, it's like you're reading her actual diary and you're there seeing her life through her eyes. So it doesn't matter if it doesn't have the same written detail. The minimalistic aspect of it works just as well as having the big description. So you know, I think that's amazing.
No, thank you.
No, what? Thank you for reading. That, you know, is fascinating.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. Erica, would you like to go next?
I would. I just want to give a fair warning first that I specifically looked for a bit of a darker segment since you guys mentioned that you're cool with darker, more fucked up stuff. So content warning for cannibalism. Content warning for cannibalism and suicidal ideation.
Ooh.
Fair enough.
Cool.
I think
my book has plenty of cannibalism. I'm into that.
All right, awesome.
Okay, Adam. Sunderland. I'm going to hand it over to you, Erica. I'm going to put on the screen your front cover. And so, yeah, just the same as the others. You introduce yourself and you can just read. And what I'll do is I'll fiddle around with all the computer bits and put some bits up on the screen. All right?
All right, thank you. So I am Erica McCorkle. On the internet, I'm called Cure of the Wind. Like on Twitter, I'm at Cure of the Wind 1. My books are dark and fucked up, and this segment that I'm about to read is no exception. What I'm about to read is from Merchants of Knowledge and Magic. It is my published book. It's available on Amazon. The man had died from one bullet shot into his brain. I didn't know how to clean out a head. Eating anything close to the brain was forbidden by Lucognitus, whose lessons taught us that the brain was the most sacred part of a body. Regardless, I did my best to remove the brain, skull, and other miscellaneous gunk, lest I tempt Kamiko to hurt me more than she already planned. As I peeled back pink skin and removed the meat, Vitellia took the inedible parts. He tossed intestines, heart, lungs, brain, and towels after towels of blood. The bones were put in a separate bin, probably for a merchant of bone to purchase later. Alotians were forbidden from using sapienti bones, but it wouldn't surprise me if Ophidian merchants used slave bones. In the end, what was left of Vidarion were flaps of pink, wrinkled skin, dead orbs I hesitated to call eyes, forever drenched in terror, and brass flameless wrists. Well, now he can sleep for 100 years, and then he'll be free in Spiritua. When I was done, the guards handcuffed me and took me to the cell where I'd been imprisoned before Kamiko started keeping me by her side. Cold, dark, and lonely. They chained me to the wall as I had been that first day. I broke. I cried, screamed, thrashed my appendages as well as I could despite the restraints. I cursed God, the wretched man who allowed this atrocity to continue. How had I ever been so proud to be his Volkov? I banged my head against the wall until I bled. Let me die. Let me just fucking die so I can sleep for 100 years too. I swear to you, oh Lord Lucognatus, when I wake up, I'll have some questions for you. You who would call yourself a god, the ruler of a pentagonal dominion, and yet let this monster run free in your domain. The guards rushed in when they realized I was trying to end it all on the hard wall. They strapped a contraption around my head with a thick foam and a gag in my mouth, more to prevent me from biting my own tongue than to prevent speaking. Ophidians were geniuses at keeping their chattel alive. Keep an eye on that one, a guard said to another. Can't risk it depreciating in value. The guard pulled up a chair, an actual chair, not a slave's back, and watched me. I wallowed in misery for an unknowable time. The tapping of Getas on the cold floor announced Kamiko's presence before she appeared before my cell door. A new tray slave followed her, holding a plate of what smelled like spicy curry. Kamiko opened the door via telekinesis and set the plate in front of me. Remarkable how much it looked like regular curry with chunks of meat in it. She unlocked my bindings and removed the gag, all with her God-given magic. Eat. When you're done, you can have dessert. From my position, I couldn't see what else was on the slave's tray. With no other option, I ate. I didn't care whether or not God forgave me for eating the meat of a sapient person. If I ever met him, I'd make him beg me for forgiveness. As much as I wished to erase the memory of how this meat tasted, soft, tender, I knew I never would. Kamiko watched me the whole time, arms crossed. I had no doubt if I tried any sudden movement, suicidal or otherwise, she'd have stopped me. Now for your dessert. The woman floated the second plate before me. A vanilla cupcake, drenched in a blackish sauce, a black stick poked out, tipped with a cherished cherry. Eat the cherry last, Kamiko ordered. Eat that extra meat, too. I served it fresh so you'd have no doubt where it came from. Oh God, the black stick. I thought I would vomit. I plucked it out of the cupcake. Zakuro's finger, with a golden ring still on, the blackest sauce, the unique color of her blood, was undeniable proof it was hers. Lucky you picked a lover with 20 fingers, Kamiko said. It gives you 19 more chances to disobey me before I start removing limbs. Unfortunately for you, Zakuro also disobeyed me. Wouldn't enchant the collar again until I cut her finger off. Ah yes, that was her ring enchanted with anti-telepathy. I found out her real name, finally. As your punishment for trying to escape and deceive me, and her punishment for initially refusing to enchant the collar, I'll be taking out your eye. I shivered. My mind went blank. She couldn't be serious. The knife I'd used to carve Vidarion sat on the tray. Kamiko brought it to her hand and made a display of balancing it on her finger, levitated with her magic. Please, no, I begged. Please, I'm the only small Odonata in the world. If you permanently injure me, shut the fuck up. She slapped me with an invisible force. I discussed it with Mother. We aren't selling you, so your resale value is irrelevant. All that matters is we have a live Odonata with distinguishable Odonata traits, your wings and tail. I'll cut off your arms and legs if it pleases me. This time I'm merciful because you begged so beautifully. That cherry is my mercy. Next time you disobey, I'll cut out your other eye without anesthesia. Please don't do this. Eat, she screamed. Terrified, crying, I ate. I ate the cupcake. I ate Zakuro's finger, minus the gold ring. And last but not least, I ate the cherry, which knocked me unconscious. And that's it.
Again, don't forget to unmute yourself. Yay! Thank you so much for reading, Erica. That was brutal.
Thank you.
I was going to say, you give Adam a run for his money, huh?
Just out of interest, why did you choose that topic specific? Not like for tonight, but like generally to write about.
Because I like to surprise people. I like to shock them and disgust them, and I like to just go all out with gore and gross topics.
Nice. We love a bit of gore. That's really cool. It reminds me a little bit of sort of like just zombie stuff, where you just got people eating each other and killing each other, and Walking Dead-ish type thing going on. Yeah, it was brutal. I agree with Adam.
It was the best kind of brutal. There were a lot of moments whenever I just like closed my eyes and shook my head like, wow, I can't believe that's whenever I'm like really moved, that's what I do.
Nice.
Is there going to be a cupcake recipe anywhere?
Funny you should say that because I am planning to include recipes in my third book.
That's amazing.
Wow, that's so cool. I'm so that's such a unique way of doing it. I love that idea.
It's funny,
really
the
love
cupcake scene has traumatized one of my writer besties, and now she just cannot eat cupcakes after reading that scene.
Good thing I have pistachio cupcakes out there.
Right?
It's so heartbreaking. Cupcakes are amazing.
But to have such a visceral response is awesome. That's great. Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Really well written as well.
Thank you.
And, I love the fact it was just straight in at the brutal bit. There was no kind of
Yeah.
gentle easing into it. It was just like bang, here we go.
Right.
I've got a question. I've got a question for you, Erica. Do you include, because I did not, but did you include any kind of content warning as far as violence is concerned?
So, yes and no. At the time this book was published, Amazon was doing this thing where if you had a content warning in your book at all, they might have deleted your book. So I have an author's note that says if you want to read the content warning, click here, and it goes to my website, and my website has the content warnings on them.
Cool.
So that's how it's going to have to be from now on.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I put a trigger warning up, by the way, in the live chat that goes out to everyone, just in case, because I don't want to have people getting upset, and I completely understand. I don't want people to sort of there are obviously things that are read in books that can be quite upsetting for some people. So I don't know. It's really difficult, isn't it? I mean,
well, again, I think that there have to be levels. I think that I could very easily read a gross section that's similar with cannibalism from my book, but not everybody wants to read that, and not everybody wants to write that. And so we need I like celebrating the horror that comes for every level. We've got Bunnicula, the bunny vampire, who is a book for small children, but that's like the gateway horror. That's like to let kids are going to be into it, and then you get them into Goosebumps, and you get them into Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and the other books from that era, and then you move on to shit like eyeballs popping and brains being melted and stuff like that. That's a bit more graphic.
I remember when I was 14, I wrote the beginning of a book, and it was really graphic, where there was a character who happened to be watching a person getting run over by a lorry, and it was graphic. And I handed it to my English teacher, who also happened to be my form tutor, and I said, "Can you read this, miss, and tell me what you think?" And the look of just was just aghast at the fact that this kid had written really graphic, gory detail of this person getting run over by a lorry.
For all our American friends, a lorry is a truck.
Yes,
lorry is a truck.
It is
want to clarify that.
I'm impressed you know that.
I just like that experience is universal. Like, did we all fuck up a teacher?
It was just her look of absolute. She just looked at me different from then on. She never
with such concern, right?
Yeah, it was, and it was just kind of. I can't even show you. It was just so like I remember standing there waiting for her to read it. It was about 8 pages worth, and she just kind of like looked up. And I said, "So what do you think, miss? Is it a good story? Can I keep writing it, do you think?" And she just kind of went, "Yeah, maybe keep reading it." And that was it. That was the feedback I got. And I just thought for someone who was exploring just writing in general, I think you write at the age when you're ready to write, and you read at the age when you're ready to read for the most part. I mean, most 8-year-olds are not going to pick up a Stephen King book, for example. They're a little bit boring. There's no pictures in them. It's a bit too much writing. So, yeah, I don't know. I think trigger warnings could be useful. But I'm not sure in terms of books how that works, because if you get to a point in a book whereby there's stuff happening that you find uncomfortable, you just kind of close the book. But if you're getting so involved with the characters, you can't necessarily separate yourself from them, and that could be quite tricky as well.
I think that's why. I think content warnings work in two ways. They help to let people know, oh no, this book has animal cruelty. I don't want to read this book. Or somebody like sees that my book has a warning of cannibalism, and they're like, oh, I do want to read that. I want to find the cannibalism.
I love cannibalism in my life.
the content warning or content information can be beneficial, I do feel like. But
yeah, that's how I feel about it. I will actively seek out books that are darker than normal, and I do that by looking for their content warnings.
I think it's because like there are writers that will do like content warnings every chapter. I don't know if that is necessarily a thing you need to do, because like I think Erica's stuff was so effective because I was so surprised and shocked whenever like things came up. Yeah, I feel like had I been reading the book, a longer version of that, I don't know if I'd want to know that it was coming, that chapter, you know?
Well, and I've got a question, Erica. How quickly do you dive into like violent, gory detail in your story? Is it chapter 1 right away? You've got craziness so your readers know what they're getting into? Or do you lead them in and you're like, and then hit them with something?
It's funny you say that, because I do believe it's important to establish that kind of thing right away for readers who aren't reading the content warnings. My first chapter is a little bit violent, not to that degree. But there is a stabbing and just general chaotic violence. Some of the more sexual slavery stuff happens in chapter 7. This book, I think it's around 50 chapters. I can't remember exactly now. So still fairly early on. So nobody should be surprised. If they get to chapter 7, they will see everything that my book has in it.
Yeah, when people were asking me about my content warning in my books, I thought about it and I was like, the book that Jules is releasing, the queer norm book that's got a lot about sexuality, I don't think it needs one, because the book literally starts with morning wood, and that sort of just kind of sets the stage for the rest of the story. You start with an erection, and that's how the book starts. So there's no question about what's coming. And this book, there's a human sacrifice and cannibalism in the first few pages. So there's no question about what's going on in my stories.
And just to reiterate, I had a very interesting conversation with the editor about that beginning chapter. I didn't give her a trigger warning. Let's just say.
So that erection was just right
there.
That
was an interesting shot.
I kind of feel bad that there was no warning.
I don't feel bad at all.
that is how morning wood works, though. It's just
surprise.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't know.
Hey, with a queer book that celebrates what I'm celebrating, I thought it was a great way to start.
I think it's an awesome way to start. Absolutely. Now, I'm really interested to hear what if you've got some bits that you'd like to read from your work.
Should I read some? Yeah. After Erica's bit, I don't know if I should read something horrible and gory. Oh, what do you got a question?
No, I was just going to say, before you do that, to make it absolutely 100% fair, because she wasn't able to have it up on the screen, I'm actually going to put Rachel's website, sorry.
They'll pump it up. Yeah, that's totally fine.
And I'll also put it in the chat as well. So hang on one second, Rachel. Sorry, I'm just trying to do like two things at once that are two very different things.
No.
There we go.
There it is. Yeah. So go visit Rachel's website. Yeah, and her books will be coming soon. So we're excited about that. Good.
We are very excited. We're looking forward to having that come out, definitely. What I'll do, Rachel, as well, is I'll put it in the main chat so it's out there too. And that'd be awesome. Go and visit all of the websites of all the people that have been reading today, all of our wonderful guests. I've put them all out in the chat. So do go and follow them. Do go and check them out on their either the website or Amazon or wherever it is they're selling their books. Join them on social media. Come and join us over here as well. We want to build our community. So, and just like, it's an amazing community, isn't it, Adam? What we're building at the moment.
We love it. Yeah. We love the guests we have on and all the friends we've made. Yeah. I talk to people constantly now that were on the show months ago that are now my friends, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. And our Discord as well, which Adam we'll share with you. Come and join us over there. It's still in its kind of like infancy stage. It's still being developed.
We got a few beta readers, a few authors have joined on. It's just getting started, but a Discord channel for just readers and writers, and so that'd be cool too.
Yeah.
I have the link. I'll be joining.
Say again?
I have the link. I'll be joining. You said
Yay. And if you want to follow Adam and myself, our links are actually in the description underneath the video. So come and follow us over there. We're both on Instagram, and Reese as well, although she's not joining us today. So we miss you, Reese. We love you, and Melanie.
Yes, we do.
We do. Okay, right. So
should I read some horror, or my plan was, since we were doing relationship and stuff, I was going to read the second half of the drag queen scene that I read a couple weeks ago on the show, but I'm kind of after that gory bit, I kind of want to follow it up in my own. So what do we think? Should I read drag queens or terrible stuff?
It's up to you, because it's entirely up to you, Adam. You can read whatever you like.
You know
whatever
what?
you want to.
Let's do the drag queen scene. It's so fun, and I've already started, and I've got it's from. So why don't you put me on the screen and I'll tell about it, because
I will indeed. Here you go.
It comes from this book, The Mantis Equilibrium, my second book, and this is my proof copy. So I don't actually have my physical copies are actually coming today, which I'm really excited about. So I'll be reading it from my phone, which is annoying, but it'll work. And to set the stage, if you did not see the video where we start this scene, where everyone goes to the drag show, they've just arrived. We're with a 14-year-old boy who is experimenting with his gender identity for the first time. And so he's come to a drag show with a couple of people who are my personal drag queens who live inside of me, coming out to real life. So we'll start from here. They've just met a friend and they're about to head inside. Oh no, I lost my place. Oh, come on. Oh. Here it is. Okay, sorry. The place was packed, and Auntie Peg pushed through the dense crowd and made her way over to the bar. A few people greeted her by name, and a couple of folks gave her air kisses on both cheeks. An inebriated character was yammering loudly over people at the bar. Her bright pink wig was rather askew. "Mrs. Venus," Auntie Peg said to her, "you're getting rather sloppy. Time for Madame Petunia to take you home." Auntie Peg hoisted Mrs. Venus off the seat. Despite mumbling protests from Madame Petunia, Auntie Peg convinced her to take Mrs. Venus away. She turned, reached down to Ninyani, and put her hands under his arms. She hoisted the boy off the floor and planted his feet on the chair where Mrs. Venus was just sitting. Ninyani stared at Mrs. Venus and Madame Petunia with a bemused expression, and he turned to Auntie Peg. He asked her, "Is Mrs. Venus a man?" Auntie Peg burst out laughing. "Honey," she said in a pandering tone, and her voice dropped an octave as she replied, "Most of us are." She gave the boy a beaming smile. Her voice returned to its normal timbre, and she said, "Mrs. Venus, Madame Petunia, Miss Cleopatra with her luxuriant mustache, and even yours truly are all queens, honey. Underneath all this fabulous," and Auntie Peg waved a hand in front of herself, "there is indeed a boy hiding. But when I'm all done up, I'm Peggy. I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be." She could see the wonder in Ninyani. "And don't you worry, you'll figure out who you're supposed to be as well, my young friend." Ninyani felt alive in a way he had never experienced before. Movement caught his eye, and he carefully turned on his perch. Auntie Peg placed a hand on his low back to keep him steady. The hall that they were in was large, and at the opposite end from the bar was a stage with a catwalk that extended out into the middle of the crowd. What Ninyani saw surprised and delighted him. Two women were strutting across the stage. Both were in high heels. One was dressed in sheer lingerie that hugged her body, and a sparkling tiara was on her head. The other was wearing a black thong and very short jacket with a collar of thick white fur. The coat only came partway down the model's ribs, and her stomach, low back, and legs were bare. The two women's sexy clothing and exposed bodies neither aroused Ninyani nor made him feel uncomfortable. Instead, he simply gazed in awe at their beauty. The spiked platform heels they both wore were tall, and the fancy footwear added to the women's impressive height. They towered over the cheering audience. Music was playing, and it almost was music was playing, and it was almost drowned by the noise of the onlookers. Their praise for the pair of parading divas was overwhelming, and Ninyani could not help it, and he surprised himself when he cheered aloud. He brought both little hands up and covered his mouth, and again in embarrassment. Auntie Peg was looking at him with a wide smile, and she suddenly let out a whooping cheer for the women on stage. She leaned over toward Ninyani and said, "The one with the skimpy jacket is my brother. Her name is Dame Angelica. She's not my biological brother, but when I first came here to Teshin City, she was the man who gave me a place to stay and helped me find the Auntie Peg who lived within me." Ninyani asked again, "That's a man?" "Queen," Auntie Peg corrected gently. "It sort of doesn't matter what's underneath," she explained, "but anyone can be a queen. When he's not Dame Angelica, he uses his regular name, but all dressed up, she's a queen. However, for the other woman up there with the see-through bodysuit, it's a little different. Her name is Zular, and she lives her entire life as a woman. Whether she's in costume or dressed up for a performance, or she's just going out to the market for apples, she is always Zular." "I don't understand," Ninyani said. "Does your brother not go to the store as Dame Angelica?" "Very rarely," Auntie Peg replied. "Usually he goes just as his basic self. However," she pointed at the stage, "Zular is always Zular." Ninyani scrunched up his face in concentration and asked, "Does that mean Zular used to be somebody else before she became Zular?" Auntie Peg beamed at him. "That's an interesting question, but the answer is hers to tell. Maybe you'll get the opportunity to ask her someday. Zular is exactly who she's supposed to be. She's exactly who she wants to be, and anyone can do that. I am who I'm supposed to be, even though I was born and raised to be very different than this." And Auntie Peg again brought her hand up the length of her body. She framed her face, struck a dramatic pose for Ninyani, and the boy laughed at her display. And I'll stop there because it keeps going, and there's more people who get on stage, and there's more competition, and there's a hair competition, and it's just fabulous. So that was my drag show. Oh, and don't forget to unmute yourselves once everybody's back on.
I liked it a lot. Is that a crossover, Adam? Are you doing or is it YA? Because he's 14, right?
He's a 14-year-old. Yeah. No, no, it's definitely mature audiences only. But 14 is the age that most kids who need to experiment start figuring out themselves. Maybe a little earlier, maybe a little later. For me, it was about 12. But when I wrote 12 into the book, that seemed too young. So I made the kid 14 instead, and I still think people are going to find it young, but it's realistic. And
14's about right.
I had a teacher, I had a high school teacher say that that's exactly the time frame that he was used to seeing kids start expressing themselves differently. So yeah, that's why I did.
Yeah,
it's definitely for mature audiences, but yeah, this is a pretty intimate, sweet scene from the story.
I loved it, and 14 sounds about right for me as well. That was when I started realizing that I was asexual. So yeah, and I just even though I'm asexual, I do find fiction to be sexy at times, and I just want to say that what you read to me was very sexy, so I very much enjoyed that.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. I liked it quite a bit. Big personalities, definitely from the divas, that was definitely hit point on. I just like all the curiousness, though. I really like exploring and being in a safe environment to do so. Everyone's like, "Yeah, you have questions? Sure. Well, what questions do you have?" And that was just really lovely, honestly.
Thank you.
The exchange with the drag queens and a person just coming to terms with their sexuality felt very relatable. Like I feel like I've had those conversations.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's important.
I also love the fact that you've got a person who's exploring themselves, but it's also safe for them to explore themselves, and normalizing that exploration. I think that's really important, and I think that gets forgotten sometimes. That is absolutely cool to just discover who you are, and sometimes it is through ways that you probably haven't thought of.
Yeah, I like to think that my story takes place in some dark future of our world, but I decided to get rid of any trace of any homophobia, transphobia, anything like that. Nobody's going to have to struggle and overcome anything to be who they are. That's not what my story is about. My story is about people hunting each other and murdering each other, but not because of their sexual orientation or their gender expression. It has nothing to do with that. Yeah. When you first meet this little boy, he's from a small village, and when he connects with the characters who he's eventually the drag queens and all them, they immediately like, oh yeah, you want to wear a pretty scarf? Go for it. Wear a pretty scarf. And he's like, these are girls' clothes. I'm not supposed to do that. And from his childhood in this really isolated village. So immediately, as soon as you get to meet him, he's accepted by the people in the community that I've created, because that's what I wanted. I wanted representation that was just positive.
I think also, yeah, I mean, I think also as well, we forget our own history, like in real life, that actually like high heels were originally created for men to wear.
And wigs.
And wigs were created for men, and so were flamboyant outfits created originally for men. Pink was originally a boy's color. Boys were originally called girls. Men originally wore skirts and dresses.
Actually,
more manly.
All truths.
So, you know, and I don't know about you guys, but growing up in the UK, we have pantomime season every Christmas, which runs for like 3 months. And
no Americans know what that is. Yeah, explain. No Americans know what that is.
It's amazing. Oh my God. Okay, right. So there is always like a widow twanky, which is always a man dressed up as a woman and like really over the top drag. Like really big boobs, really big bum, big wig, and very flamboyant and all over the top. And they're normally like the best character in the show, and it's a live performance. It's aimed at children as young as babies, all the way up to adults. Throughout the whole show, there are a ton of adult jokes which go way over all the kids' heads. So when you're a kid, you're like, oh, it's so fun, because like it's all funky colours and it's like, I don't know, Cinderella or Peter Pan or those kind of stories that are being retold. Whilst you've got a whole plethora of really rude adult jokes going on. So it's great for all people. And growing up with that, it's just like, in terms of like drag shows and stuff. So we don't see it in the same way.
Very normalized. Yeah, they're not having the issue that we are over here. I think it's pretty timely that my book has a drag scene with a kid in it, especially since that's what people are so angry about in this country right now.
Well, and it's interesting because, you know, acting started off as women were not allowed to take the stage, so men had to play women roles.
Yep, absolutely.
So they had to dress in drag, and so the first performers were all drag artists essentially. You know, everyone played women's parts and men's parts, and they played all the parts. And so I kind of find it funny that we've, you know, now seen that in a negative light, I guess, in America, especially, I guess. You know, I found out recently in Thailand, I think is what it was, when a newborn is born, they actually bring in a man who is dressed as a woman and drag performer. They come in and they bless the new child and whatnot, and they like give like, I don't know how to properly put it. I don't want to say the wrong thing. But essentially this person would come in and it's a sign of good luck. They would help nanny, essentially, like a caregiver, essentially, just for like the first week or so. And essentially it's supposed to like bring good luck to the household and the newborn and such things. And so to them, I mean, that's just life. You don't see them being weird here.
They're just clothes. I mean, like, they are just clothes at the end of the day. I know the clothes represent the person, but they are still just clothes. They don't represent...
What I find really interesting about the clothes thing is that now that we're getting like legislation to say that men are not allowed to wear women's clothes and women are not allowed to wear men's clothes in like places like Florida and shit like that, doesn't that mean that the legislators are dictating to fashion designers what is whose clothes? And I don't think fashion designers should be accepting that. I think they should start making clothes that are either so gender neutral that you can't tell, or they start intentionally making women's clothes for men that you can't mistake that the other way. You know what I mean?
Women have been technically wearing men's clothes for years. You know, we started wearing trousers in the 1914 when all the men went to go and fight because they were all conscripted into the war, and women had to go and fill in the jobs. So when it worked in ammunition factories and stuff, and they couldn't wear dresses there because they were dangerous. So they can't have it both ways. If they're going to bow men, then does that mean that all women have to wear skirts? It's going to look like the Stepford Wives.
Well, and it connects to the earlier point, right? Like, it is so hard to explore like your gender expression and like figure out what's appropriate for you. Whenever you start legislating what people can and can't wear, like, it's hard enough without that to figure it out, right? Like, it was hard for me to wear shirts with sheer sleeves and glittery like fringes. Like, this took me a couple years to get comfortable with this.
Yeah.
And that's hard enough. Much less like legislators saying like it's wrong to do those things,
Yep. And specifically that exact vibe is what I wanted to remove from the world of my books entirely. Ninyani wants to wear something sheer and sparkly. Girl, he can do it. I'm into
and
it.
I love that. It takes the pressure off and it makes it more fun and inviting to
Absolutely.
read, and you're not having to worry about all the conflicts and stuff.
My godchild came out recently as non-binary, and I just loved that person even more than I could have imagined beforehand. I just to be queer and to embrace that as a little 10-year-old, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Totally awesome.
Absolutely. Well, about 8 years old, you start sort of having a bit more of an understanding of yourself. And
identity.
Around 8 years old is where the exploration normally starts. And it's normally around the age of about between 12 and 14 when you start settling on a sexuality.
After puberty has started working through your system, and your hormones telling you things you've never felt before.
You kind of know your gender by like 8 or 9 years old, though. You know whether you're male or female, or whether you're not.
Well, I think that expression is very fluid through our lives, and can change our gender expression, our sexuality. I think both those things are very, very fluid, and most people try and double down. And this is how I am. This is how I've always felt. This is how I'm always going to feel. And I don't think that's realistic. I think that we change constantly in the way we feel.
Yeah, but
I think there's so many factors, right? Because like after the quarantine, tons of people started coming out as like non-binary and transgender because I think they just had time to think about who they were, because we don't take that time usually because we're so busy.
That's a great point. Yeah.
They've also found that women their sexuality tends to fluctuate throughout their lives. They don't tend to settle. So, obviously I'm not speaking for every woman, but that's quite a normal thing. And I was watching a short documentary about some of the tribal groups in countries in Africa. And there was one who was a warlord, and he met the researcher with a Kalashnikov gun and a sparkly pink butterfly necklace around his neck, which I just thought was just perfect. So, and he, and so for them, it was just like that represented his status within the tribe. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
I mean, that's a hell of a way to, claim a place in a hierarchy.
Absolutely. I'm not sure which came first, the sparkly butterfly necklace or the Kalashnikov. But the researcher introduced him with that. And apparently the girls like it, which is why he wears it. That's what he said. The women like it. So that's cool. I like that. I like the fact that, it doesn't destroy anything about masculinity or femininity, regardless of what we wear. I think, I think
those are very culturally imposed on us. The ideals of masculine and feminine, I think they're different from culture to culture. I think they're very specific to culture. I think that it takes a lot of effort to try and move beyond those ideals because they're so ingrained in us.
Yeah, normalize wearing pretty colors and shiny things regardless of who you are.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Be a rainbow.
I like that. Yeah, absolutely. I think I love this time period because we have so much more ability to be able to express ourselves. If you go back to like the 1920s or the 1940s, you've got all the men wearing the same grey suit and the same grey bowler hat, all going to the same kind of jobs, and the women all wearing the same kind of dresses. And I just think, how boring. Our society is so much stronger by the differences that we all have. And the uniqueness that we have, and by bringing that together, each person adds their own bit of strength to it, and I think that's really powerful, and I think it's so important to embrace that, and that is why I'm publishing Adam's book.
Thank you, Jules. We're excited. We're getting close to the end. Do you want to read a little section of your book before we get there? Do we have a little something you can share?
Yeah, I've got a little something. Give me a sec. What I'll do, I'll chuck myself on the big screen.
Yeah.
There we go. And I'll also put my Instagram link up there as well. So by all means, come and follow me over there. Now, just very quickly, Ray has gone to the apothecary basically with her father, and they're trying to get some medicine to try and cure someone. And this is her first real interaction with someone who is clearly after something more than what she thinks she would be able to give. Okay. Keeping his hand on the counter, Pa tapped the side with the fingers on his other hand. I'm just going to mute a couple of you, sorry. Okay. Creating an awkward rhythm that enhanced the uncomfortable mood in the space. All of it. Pa's tone was flat. What? All of it? Why? The man's eyes narrowed, his face scrunched into itself, making his eyes appear even more dangerous as the white that surrounded the pupils producing the image of a madman. There are only a few grams in the whole of the island, and most of that is not here. Even if it was, half must be kept for the AB, as well you know. My reasons are not your concern, Teller. Power growled at him, repeating the man's name in a sarcastic tone. Teller folded his arms, leaning back to rest on the wall behind him. If you're having all of my stock, it is. Pa did not move. Teller remained still. The atmosphere was a heady mix of tense aggression ready to explode at any second. Thane, the man spoke in a sing-song voice, his lips curled around every letter, accentuating the phonemes. Forgive me, but what am I to say to the AB when they do their stock check? You, of all people, know this, that here is my bed and board. Teller flicked his eyes in my direction before glaring at Pa again. Do you know how difficult this was to get? Perhaps there is one way. Well, but you already knew the cost before you came here, didn't you? I do. So can we stop playing games and just complete the transaction? Pa snarled the words at Teller, whose cheeks blanched, then reddened to a deep purple as he just stared at Pa. Then his ice-cold, beady eyes scanned every inch of me. His tongue licked his lips. His eyes moved slowly, taking in everything he could and what he imagined he could. I forced my eyes away from him and ignored it, turning my back on him. But despite that, I could still feel his eyes boring into my back. So I focused on pretending to be interested in the strange items on his shelves, repeating in my head Pa's words about about remaining silent. I know how to replenish your stock, Teller. If you give it all to me, you'll get it back by the end of next week with extra, and I will pay the full asking price. Pa nodded his head to Teller as was written. Teller's eyes grew wide as he raised his eyebrows at this. You got this all worked out, haven't you? He peered over his spectacles at us both. And what if I decide to decline your offer? Right now, I see no reason to accept this. That it's unless you give me a better offer. No. Pa's voice was calm but flat. The offer remains as it stands, and you're just wasting my time. I need the Glyberon now. We all need things, sir. For instance, need. Pa slammed his fist into the counter, making it clattering sound that reverberated around the room, making me jump. The older man recoiled with a smirk on his face. He looked at me again and clasped his fingers into the shape of a steeple, resting his elbows on the counter just an inch from Pa, scrutinizing every line and crease in my father's face. I will give you the whole stock, the location, and the recipe to brew enough Glyberon to last you as long as you need. His tongue moistened his lips as he stared at me. Yes, I would give you everything for 1 hour with that brat girl over there. 1 hour, and that will do for the transaction, and nothing else needs to be paid. Bringing you back now.
Oh, I didn't like that. Ominous. Ugh.
I know, so intense. I know.
That's Ray's first experience with someone who is after her in a way that she has never experienced and definitely doesn't want to give him, because he's about 80.
Oh God,
It's like, oh, he's a proper creep.
it's a bit too much age gap for us. Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely, he's definitely not.
Gross.
Yeah, he's definitely not. And he is one of these characters who is a returning character, and kind of like, she has many interactions with him throughout the series that are just as creepy and just as ugh.
I hate it. Thanks.
But yeah, anyway, thank you so much for listening. That was really sweet of you guys to let me read.
Yeah, that was fantastic reading too.
Yeah, thank you.
I love that everybody got to read today. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was really good. I've really enjoyed today. So I'm just going to say a massive thank you to all of our wonderful guest sources. Thank you so much for each of you joining us today. It's an absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed having you on.
Sorry, Jules, hold on. Hey, do you have something to say?
You go.
Yeah, hold on. Sorry. Been fighting with my camera this entire time. But I'm really glad it came back on for this, because I checked and my author proofs for the first time just came in.
Oh my gosh, let's see.
So this is gonna be the first time I hold my book in my hands.
Oh my gosh.
Still online.
This is the best feeling in the world.
Hang on 1 second. This requires, hang on 1 second.
Yeah, full screen.
Yeah.
Oh,
this is my book. So this is the author proof. So they put the not for resale. Hold on, let me turn on the light. I'm fighting with all of the electronics today.
It's okay.
But this is the Vane Introduction to Macabre Myths and Monsters.
look at that.
That's
Gorgeous.
amazing.
Love it.
Congratulations.
You know what?
And that smile, we all have felt that. Every one of us who's felt our book in our hand the first time. Oh my God, you're just beaming. I love it. I love it.
This is mine. I did this.
That's right.
I'm just going to
that.
fill in the gaps a little bit for the people on Clubhouse who might be listening to this or will be listening to this. I just want to describe for a moment your face, because you've just reminded me of a child at Christmas who has had something on their list that they really wanted.
Yes.
They've been told all year that they're not going to get it, but they really, really, really want it. But parents have gone, no, we can't afford it. We're not going to get it for you. Don't expect anything. And then they open their present, and that thing is like, and it's just like, that is just pure gold. It's absolutely pure gold.
What a highlight to end the show on. That's amazing.
Absolutely.
And so cool to share that moment with you.
I know, that's just amazing. No, I mean, thank you so much for allowing us to share that moment. That is such a special moment.
That was really special, yeah.
Really was. Thank you. And you must be so proud. And when you've got it in your hand and it's a tangible object, it's just like, oh my God, like I've done this.
It's so different.
Yep.
It's real now. It's dangerously real.
So many authors think of themselves as aspiring. You are accomplished, honey. Look at that thing. That is amazing.
That is published now. That is a published book.
Published and everything. Yep, that's awesome.
It's so cool. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. You're right, Adam. That is just such a high to end the show on. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's made my evening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's made mine too.
Oh, good.
You have a new baby, and we're all celebrating with you.
Yeah, absolutely. If I had like little emojis that I could put on the screen, I would, but I don't, unfortunately. But you know, it's just, thank you. That's amazing. I'm going to say a massive thank you to each and every one of you. You've made my evening tonight. I've had a really good time, and I would love you to come back and visit us again. and help us grow the community and become one of our friends so that we can like share our journey together. That would be amazing. So thank you so much, and thank you so much, Adam, as well. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Jules. Thank you, Adam.
You're welcome.
It's such a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for having me here.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome.
Yeah,
and
you're
absolutely.
marvelous. Thank you.
Definitely. And if you ever want to reach out to us to just be on the show because you think actually you've got some updates you'd like to share with us, or you'd like to come back and visit us, just message us either on Discord or via Instagram, and we'll have you back in a heartbeat.
We're scheduled about a month out right now. We've got the next 4 or 5 weeks scheduled. So the next time you would be on would be in a while, but that would be perfect. So we'd love to have you back on whenever.
Definitely. And that goes the same for all of the authors that we have on here. We always love
always. Yep.
All right, so I'm going to say farewell, adieu to all of you. Thank you so much for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure. Farewell and good night.
Good night.
Good night.